Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating. It's the story of a man, Tom, and his journey, well, across continents.
Yeah, it's quite a narrative. We're basically looking at how family, identity, culture kind of clash and connect in today's world, all through his eyes.
Exactly. We've got these excerpts, bits of his story detailing his interactions, his thoughts, his travels, and our goal here is to pull out the really insightful moments from this whole adventure.
Give you a unique angle on, well, self-discovery, I suppose.
Right. And what hooks you straight away is how it all starts.
Oh, definitely. It's this sudden revelation he has, a big gap in his own story, about his biological father.
And that just kicks everything off, sends him packing from New York to India, a place he knows, well, basically nothing about, despite it being his ancestral land.
Totally foreign to him. And along the way, you meet all these interesting people.
Yeah, there's Ranveer, Brian, Katie, Tencel, Supriya, even a Buddhist monk gets involved.
And each one sort of pushes him, makes him rethink things about himself, about the world.
You really see his expectations, probably very American expectations, bumping up against reality.
Leading to some pretty unexpected connections and honestly some big life questions. So where's the absolute starting point?
It all boils down to this family secret, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It comes out in like a normal conversation.
Hmm.
Suddenly this huge missing piece about his biological father is revealed
We find out his mom had this brief encounter years ago in New York.
with an Indian man named Narang. Yeah.
Hmm.
And Tom knew nothing.
And his first reaction is quite telling, I think. He gets almost defensive about his childhood.
Right. He starts listing the good things, supportive mom, financially secure, good schools.
Like he needs to prove it was okay, even though this new information doesn't necessarily negate that. Why do you think he does that? Is it like protecting his own story?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It could be, yeah. Sort of an internal negotiation. I mean, all those things, the stability, the education, that was his identity.
And this news kind of shakes the foundation.
Exactly. So the defensiveness is maybe shoring up the old narrative
Hmm.
before he lets this new massive piece in. But, eventually curiosity wins out,
He feels this pull, this need to connect with that hidden part of his background.
which is what makes him actually decide, right, I'm going to India.
So the decision's made, but even before he gets on a plane, his world starts shifting right there in his New York office.
Yeah, this new manager shows up, Ranveer, an Indian immigrant. You can tell from his accent he hasn't been there long.
And their first few interactions are really interesting, aren't they? The contrast.
Totally. Ranveer's still figuring out American culture, probably operating on, a different set of assumptions.
Meanwhile, Tom, who knows zero about India firsthand, is about to go there, probably with his own stereotypes from, like, movies or whatever.
And they talk about why they're even in New York. It's so different. Ranveer's there because of a company, Visa. Didn't even really choose New York.
Right, he wanted California. And Tom's like, nah, California's just geeks and hackers. He actively chose the New York buzz after growing up somewhere completely different, Mississippi.
It just shows how, the same city means different things depending on how you got there.
And there are these little cultural misunderstandings, too. Tom mentions his uncle's view on New Yorkers, and Ranveer just doesn't quite get it at first.
Yeah, it hints at those deeper, maybe regional or national biases we all carry. And later, Ranveer asks these kind of innocent questions about American controversies.
Shows he's still an outsider looking in. What do you think Ranveer's sort of naivety tells us, compared to Tom's, like, ingrained Americanness?
Well, it really highlights that even within the U.S., culture isn't monolithic,
Yeah.
right? Being an immigrant adds this whole other layer.
For sure. And I thought it was interesting when Ranveer is surprised Tom isn't connected to India, maybe because of a name. It shows that common assumption. Heritage equals connection.
Which isn't always true, clearly.
Mm.
And then Tom kind of deflects, pretends he saw the name Narang in
Yeah.
a newspaper or something.
Yeah, a little white lie that hints at the bigger search going on inside. So he's carrying all this, the secret, the plan. Naturally, he starts talking to people.
Right. He needs to process this huge decision, meeting his father for the first time ever. So he talks to his friend Brian.
And Brian brings a very different vibe to it, much more practical.
Skeptical even. He's asking, can you trust your mom's memory after all this time? Maybe you should get a DNA test first.
Which is logical, I guess. Brian's looking at the potential downsides, the uncertainty.
But maybe missing the, emotional core of it for Tom. It's not just about facts.
It feels like it's about understanding this missing part of himself. Brian seems more grounded, maybe, about relationships in general.
Yeah, contrast with Tom's sort of deep desire for this connection, even with a stranger. But then there's Katie.
The barista, yeah. He
Yeah,
talks to her too, and that feels different.
definitely. Katie offers, well, maybe more empathy. She has her own complex family background, Spanish immigrants.
Right, so maybe she gets the feeling of not quite knowing your full story or navigating tricky family stuff.
She doesn't just focus on the what ifs or the practical problems like Brian does.
It feels like she recognizes the emotional weight for Tom. She encourages him, not because it'll definitely be great, but because maybe he needs to go for himself.
Yeah, supports the exploration itself.
Oh.
So, okay, he's had these chats, different perspectives,
hmm
and he goes. He gets on the plane to India.
And this is where things really start to get interesting. His assumptions meet reality.
Straight away, yeah.
Yeah,
Landing in India, it's immediately a different world. Even at the airport, he meets Tencel,
a Tibetan woman. And they have this conversation about memory, like autobiographical versus semantic memory, facts versus lived experience.
which is pretty deep for an airport chat. And it feels significant, doesn't it? Like it sets the tone.
Totally. It feels almost like fate or something. He was planning to go straight to his dad's village, right?
Yeah. But he gets drawn into Tensel's world instead. This conversation about memory kind of mirrors his own situation, trying to connect with the past he only knows as facts.
So he takes this detour, goes with her to Majnu-Katila, the Tibetan colony in Delhi. That must have been eye-opening before he even got close to his father's world.
Oh, for sure. Being plunged into that Tibetan community,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a contrast to, say, the individualism of New York he's used to.
The community feel, the warmth, watching that film together about the Dalai Lama.
He notes that himself, right? How community seems more important than just selfish goals. It suggests he's already starting to see other ways to live.
And things are developing with Tencel. He's clearly interested.
Definitely drawn to her,
Yeah.
intellectually, personally. But then there's Katie back home.
Creates this inner conflict. He seems hesitant with Tencel. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's the distance, obviously. Different cultures. Plus, he's still got Katie in the picture, unresolved. And Hensel has her own path, her studies.
Maybe he doesn't want to mess that up or
Right.
commit when his main goal in India is still ahead of him.
Could be. And their conversations get deeper as they travel towards Dharamshala. She introduces him to Buddhist ideas, like dependent origination.
Right. Can you just quickly explain that for anyone listening who isn't familiar?
Sure, basically it's the idea that nothing exists on its own. Everything comes into being because of other things, other conditions. It's all interconnected.
It's like a giant web.
Exactly. It challenges that idea of a fixed, separate self. Everything influences everything else. How do you think that might land with someone like Tom coming from a very individualistic culture?
It must be quite a shift, moving away from thinking just about me towards seeing how everything connects.
And their connection deepens too, especially on the bus when Tencel shares her own story.
Escaping Tibet as a child? Wow, that's incredibly personal. Must have really strengthened their bond.
Absolutely. Sharing something that profound builds trust. But then he finally reaches his father's village in Punjab. Another huge shift.
Yeah, going from anonymous New York, then the Tibetan community, now to this rural Indian village where he's suddenly the focus of attention.
Everyone knows everyone. What do you think would have struck him most?
Probably the pace of life, slower, that tight-knit community feel, more traditional ways of doing things, a world away from his life.
And meeting his father, Narang. That must have been intense. So much unsaid history there.
And then meeting Radha, his father's partner, another layer to figure out.
He notices little things about Radha, right?
Mm.
How her demeanor is different from American women he knows. Just subtle cultural cues.
And he starts learning about his father's life there, his commitment to teaching, the respect people have for him.
It starts to chip away at maybe any negative ideas Tom had built up about why his father left or stayed away.
He gets immersed, the food, the customs, seeing the values of the community. He even texts Katie saying he sees this like genuine kindness, even if people don't have much materially compared to back home.
You can see his perspective widening, can't you? He's letting go of his old filters.
Starting to appreciate different ways of living. And then he talks to his father about his father's time in New York.
Yeah, gets the other side of the story. Why his dad left America feeling disillusioned with materialism, wanting something deeper philosophically.
A totally different path. And his dad's view of America is pretty cynical, that joke about the tax on pissing.
It really highlights how different their worlds are, even as they're connecting. But his dad also suggests Tom could help the village, teach computer skills.
Plants a little seed for the future, maybe. So when Tom leaves the village, things feel different. Less resentment, maybe.
Definitely seems like an internal shift has happened. which takes him to Dharamshala next, right?
Right, back to Tencel. And this is where the spiritual exploration really deepens.
Yeah, they're in the heart of Tibetan culture, discussing Buddhist ideas like emptiness, dependent origination, really challenging his Western mindset.
He meets a Buddhist monk too.
And they talk about the big stuff, purpose of life, karma, the whole Western focus on stuff versus trying to find contentment. How's all this hitting Tom, do you think?
It seems to be making him really look inward, questioning his own values, maybe the things he just took for granted back home.
This focus on inner peace over just acquiring things.
And while all this duck thinking is going on, his feelings for Tencel are growing stronger. You can tell he really admires her.
But it's complicated. The cultural differences are real. She's dedicated to her studies. It's not simple.
Definitely not a straightforward romance brewing.
Yeah.
And just when he's trying to figure all that out, another twist.
Oh, yeah. On the bus back to Delhi, he meets someone else, Supriya.
A brief encounter, but intense.
And then comes the email. Wow, that changes everything again.
Totally flips the script. Supriya emails him she's pregnant.
And asks him to marry her, which is, a huge deal culturally, besides just the shock of the news itself.
Puts him in an incredibly difficult position. He's got feelings for Tencel, this huge new responsibility with Supriya, the cultural pressure.
What a dilemma. And his decision. He goes back. Again.
Back to India. Shows how much these connections, these unexpected turns, are driving his life now.
So round 2 in India, meeting Supriya's family this time, plunges him right into a more, let's say, traditional Indian family setting.
He gets a first-hand look at how important family expectations and social rules are, like her grandmother worrying about them being different castes.
Right, the caste system. Even though things are changing, intercaste marriage can still be a really big deal, facing pushback in some communities. It must have been so different from relationship dynamics he knew in the U.S.
Hugely different. He's seeing how love matches versus arranged marriages are viewed, getting this crash course in the culture he's now deeply entangled with.
He talks with Supriya's mother, too, about things like puja worship and the spiritual idea of dissolving the ego. More insights into that worldview.
It's like layer upon layer of cultural learning happening really fast and under intense circumstances.
So eventually he returns to New York. Again, and he talks to Katie.
And those conversations feel different now, don't they? There's a sense of closure.
Yeah, like he's processed it all. This whole massive journey, India, his father, Tencel, Supriya, it clearly changed him profoundly. His view of his dad, his own identity, what he values.
The future, relationship-wise, still seems kind of open-ended, but the growth is undeniable. He's not the same guy who got on that first flight.
Absolutely not. So when you look back at the whole thing...
It started as this search for his father, right? But it became so much bigger.
Way bigger. A real exploration of, like, cultural clashes, personal values, the search for meaning.
Yeah.
All that deep stuff.
His story just perfectly captures how complex identity is now in this globalized world. How much family history matters, and how random encounters can completely change your path.
You really saw his initial judgments, his assumptions get turned upside down by everyone he met, which led to this incredible personal growth, didn't it? Rethinking what actually mattered.
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
Leaves you pondering, for sure. Like, how much do our own backgrounds, our family stories, the ones we know and the ones we don't, shape who we are?
And what kinds of unexpected things, maybe journeys or just conversations, could lead us to discover something huge about ourselves?
And how do you balance what you want with what your culture expects? Or just the sheer complexity of connecting with people from totally different worlds?
It suggests that seeking understanding, whether it's about your past or about the wider world, it often takes you down paths you never, ever expected.
But those unexpected paths, that's where the real transformation can happen.